Hello everyone, I'm Smooth Shading, and in this tutorial I'll be showing you how to create a nice flame effect in Live2D using inverted masks. This tutorial is intended for people that are already familiar with the basics of Live2D. I'll be explaining how this approach works, but will not be providing step-by-step instructions. Let's begin by going over the art assets you'll need. All you really need in order to achieve this effect is a couple of basic flame shapes and a mask. But in this tutorial I'll also be using a couple of glow layers and some additional little bits of flame, both of which should be considered optional. For the flames, I'm using orange and yellow teardrop shapes with a slight gradient, but you can use whatever shapes and colors you like. For the additional bits, which I'm calling sparks, I'm using a half dozen roughly flame-looking shapes in the same colors as the basic flames. The mask and glow layers shown here are circles, but these will be deformed so much in Live2D that the initial shape really doesn't matter. On to Live2D. Import the assets and create art meshes for each texture. We'll start with the basic flame shape and movement first. Arrange the small flame shape inside of the larger one. Here I've set the blend mode on the inside shape to additive and the opacity to 40%, but feel free to experiment and see what looks best with your design. Place both of the flame shapes inside a warp deformer that's big enough to contain the flames and the sparks we'll be adding later. Also create a new parameter with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 4, and check the box to set it to repeat. Add keyforms at 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. For the keyforms at 0 and 4, leave the shape of the deformer unchanged. At 1 and 3, squish the flame down, making sure to also increase the width in order to preserve the volume of the shape. At 2, stretch the flame up while narrowing it accordingly. This gives the overall movement and bounce we want for the flame, and we can move on to the inverted masks. Create a copy of the mask texture we imported and squish it into a blob. Position this blob so it's just barely intersecting the large flame shape and create beginning and end keyforms on the flame parameter. Continue to add additional keyforms on 1, 2, and 3, moving the blob up and along the edge of the large flame shape, reshaping it however you like as you go. Add an additional keyform on 3.5 and move the blob off to the side so it won't intersect with the flame shape as it returns back to its starting position. Select multiple keys editing from the hamburger menu and set the opacity for all of these keyforms to 0%. Copy the ID for this mask layer, paste it into the clipping ID field of the large flame shape, and check the invert mask box. Move the parameter through the keyforms to see how it looks. What we've done here is animated an inverted mask along the edge of the flame shape, removing a chunk of the basic shape to give things a much more organic look. Let's do it again. Create another copy of the original mask texture, deform it into a new blob, and choose a completely different starting position this time. We're going to be creating a bunch of inverted masks, and you want their movements to be staggered from one another. Add beginning and end keyforms, and then repeat the process of creating a looping path up and along the edge of the flame shape. Set the opacity to 0%, and add the ID for this mesh to the clipping ID field of the basic flame. Repeat this process to add additional inverted masks to both the small and large flame shapes. In this example, I'm using 5 masks on the larger shape and 4 on the smaller shape. Here's what their movement looks like. The light blue masks are clipped to the smaller inner flame shape, and the bright green masks are clipped to the larger flame shape. And here's what the movement looks like with the opacity of the masks set to 0%. As you can see, we're already well on our way to a nice rippling flame effect. Now we'll add some optional sparks and glow. Select the art mesh for one of the sparks imported earlier, move it behind the basic flame shape, and create beginning and end keyforms. Add additional keyforms on 1, 2, and 3 so that the spark flitters up and out from behind the flame. For the keyforms on 3 and 4, reduce the opacity to 0% so the spark isn't visible as it returns to its starting position. Repeat this process for each additional spark that you'd like to add, staggering their movements appropriately. In this example, I'm using 6 different little flame bits. Add any glow layers you want to include and drop them into the same deformer as everything else. Now we can move on to the final step and create a simple idle animation for our flame. The animation I've created is 90 seconds long at 60 frames per second and contains one full cycle of the flame parameter. Switch to the graph editor, select both of your keyforms, and set the interpolation to linear so the flame will flicker at a constant speed. You can adjust how fast or slow the flame flickers by making this animation shorter or longer, respectively. And here are the results.